Hello.
Hello.
I'm Janae Kane.
I'm Eric Liu.
And this is Civic Saturday. We are coming to you from our home in Seattle, Washington. And let's see where you are joining us from today. We're going to check in the chat.
It's like Nebraska, Seattle, Fremont, Seattle, West Seattle, Chicago, Memphis, of course.
Yay, Memphis.
Yep.
I see some friends here. I see some neighbors. I think my brother is watching from New Mexico out in the mountains. That's exciting.
Eaton, Colorado.
All right. Well, wherever you are joining us from today, we extend to you a warm Civic Saturday virtual hug. And we're just so glad that you are here.
We're especially glad to be joined by some friends in Memphis, Tennessee. And I want to introduce one of them, Shamichael Hallman from Memphis. Shamichael, say hi and how you doing? And tell us who's joining you from Memphis today.
Hey, Eric and Janae, so great to be with you. A hearty welcome from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm really excited to have two phenomenal women with me today. First up is Tonya Dyson, who's going to lead us in song.
Hello, how are you?
And Brooke Sarden, who is going to have a poem for us today at the end of the gathering.
Hey, everybody, how are you?
Well, it's so great to have all three of you with us representing Memphis and just embodying the way in which Civic Saturday, as it's become virtual, is really trying to just connect with folks across the land. I just wanted to say a word about Citizen University and Civic Saturdays to folks for whom this might be the first time encountering us. Our work at Civic Saturday is all about trying to foster a culture of powerful, responsible citizenship across the United States. We think about our work as trying to spread the belief that a strong democracy requires strong citizens, that we all have the power to make change happen, and we all have the responsibility to try. And we've got a variety of different programs that try to get at those goals. And one of the flagship programs is this, Civic Saturday, which we think of as a gathering that's kind of a civic analog to a faith gathering. And it's rooted it's not church, it's not synagogue or mosque, but it is centered around what we think of as American civic religion. The creed, the ideals, the deeds, the rituals that we practice or try to live up to in American life. And the spirit of these gatherings, when we started them in Seattle, our home base 4 years ago, was of course always face-to-face, and we're adapting now. But a couple of years into doing them here in Seattle, we launched a civic seminary to start training catalytic leaders from all around the United States to lead these kinds of gatherings in their own communities. And there are folks from small towns and big towns all over the US. And our friend Shamichael is one of our civic seminary graduates. We call them Civic Saturday Fellows. And we're so glad today to be featuring Michael and others from Memphis.
So what are we going to do today? We're going to take a moment, all of us together, to sit in silent meditation, to center ourselves, to focus on our breath, and really just to check in on how we're feeling right now. We are going to hear song, poetry. Eric and I will read some civic scripture that Shamichael picked out. Shamichael will then deliver our civic sermon. We will have more song and poetry. And then we're going to go to our civic circles. And if you look over in the chat, if you haven't already signed up to receive the link to the Zoom civic circles, go ahead and sign up now. So, I also want to say that our team at Citizen University is monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, comments, reflections, please leave them there and interact with one another. So
before you dive into that, I just want to ask Shamichael, because he, as one of our civic seminarians, has been leading these gatherings all over Memphis, and they've just been fantastic. And Shamichael, tell us a little bit about how they've been going there since you started last fall.
Yeah, Eric, they have really been going great. I was a part of the last cohort that came through in the summer of last year. And man, there were probably, I guess, maybe 10 other just really phenomenal people. And seminary was just a life transforming a few days for me. And coming back from that, we immediately started hosting gatherings in various settings across Memphis, and they've been really great. We recently, thanks to the Memphis Library Foundation, were able to get a grant to host them at every library in the city of Memphis. And so we're on that journey now, pivoting like you all are, to take Civic Saturday to every community in Memphis.
That's fantastic. Shamichael, we thank you for your dedication and for spreading the civic love around Memphis. So I want to show you something. There's going to be glare on it because we're in our home. But if you can, I want you to take a look at this painting. I'm going to put it closer, but then take it away because of the glare. And I want to tell you that this painting is an extraordinary thing. It was created by my Uncle Frederick Can, who in 1948, along with my mother, contracted polio during the terrible polio epidemic that was sweeping across our nation, and especially at that time in New York and in Louisiana. My uncle and my mother went up to visit my aunt in New York, came back to Louisiana, and both came down with polio. They then spent the next year, my mother a year, my uncle 2 years, in Charity Hospital in New Orleans, 90 miles away from my grandmother and my grandfather, who at that time were of modest means and could only visit every so often. So the reason why I want to tell you about this painting is, although my mother recovered most of the use of her body, my uncle never did. He was paralyzed from the neck down and lived his life in an iron lung or sitting up in a wheelchair with the use of a corset that helped him breathe. But later in his life, late in his life, he decided he wanted to become a painter, and he did. So he painted this painting with a brush that he held on a stick in his mouth. He painted dozens of these paintings. He even had some art openings. People bought his paintings, and I'm lucky enough to have quite a few in my home. So take from that what you will during this moment. We all can gather our strength, look inside of us for what we can use to get through this. So if you will now close your eyes, take in a deep breath, exhale, feel your feet firmly planted on the floor, sit firmly in your chair or on your floor, wherever you are. Relax your shoulders and your arms and your face. Soften your heart. Take in another deep breath. And exhale. One more time. And again. Now slowly open your eyes. And let's welcome our first song from the wonderful Tonya. Tonya?
Yes. So glad to be here this morning singing a beautiful song of mine. One of my favorite songs, actually. When you're down and troubled and you need a helping hand, and nothing is going right. Oh, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just called out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Whoa, winter, spring, summer, or fall. All you gotta do is call and I'll be there. Yeah, yeah. You've got a friend. Oh, 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 oh. If the sky above you grows dark and full of clouds, and that old north wind begins to blow, oh, keep your head together and call my name out loud. Soon you'll hear me knocking at your door. Oh, you just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Oh, winter, spring, summer, or fall. All you have to do is call and I'll be here. Yeah. You got a friend. Oh, you got a friend. Oh, you've got a friend. You've got a friend.
Tonya Dyson, thank you so much for giving the gifts of your voice and your artistry and your friendship. We came to know Tonya a couple of years ago, actually, when our Citizen University team went to Memphis to organize a special gathering called Citizen Fest. And it's really a joy to, in these darker times, to be able to see the bright light of your face and to hear it in your voice, Tonya. We sure do love you and appreciate you. Every time we do a Civic Saturday, because this gathering is meant to be a civic analog to a faith gathering, we always center before we get to the sermon with some texts that we think of as civic scripture, texts drawn from different parts of the American tradition. Maybe you've heard of some, maybe you haven't, but they're chosen, in this case by Shamichael, to actually seed our thinking and our feeling before Shamichael delivers his sermon. So we have two texts today, and Janae will read the first and I'll read the second.
Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, published 1962. We stand now where two roads diverge, but unlike the roads in Robert Frost's familiar poem, they are not equally fair. The road we have long been traveling is deceptively easy, a smooth superhighway on which we progress with great speed. But at its end lies disaster. The other fork of the road, the one less traveled by, offers our last, our only chance to reach a destination that assures the preservation of the earth.
This is from a book called The Paradise Born in Hell, The Extraordinary Communities That Arise in Disaster by Rebecca Solnit. This was published in 2009. You can read recent history as a history of privatization, not just of the economy, but also of society, as marketing and media shove imagination more and more toward private life and private satisfaction. as citizens are redefined as consumers, as public participation falters, and with it, any sense of collective or individual political power, as even the language for public emotions and satisfactions withers. There is no money in what is aptly called free association. We are instead encouraged by media and advertising to fear each other and regard public life as a danger and a nuisance, to live in secured spaces, communicate by electronic means, and acquire our information from media rather than from each other. But in disaster, people come together. And though some fear this gathering as a mob, many cherish it as an experience of a civil society that is close enough to paradise.
I'd like to just once again thank Eric and Janae and really the entire Citizen University team for opening up their online home to us here in Memphis. As Eric said, we had the opportunity to host the CU team here in 2018 for Citizen Fest, and the relationship has just blossomed since then. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to be here today. I want to thank each of you who are watching from all over the country who've tuned in for this third online Civic Saturday gathering. The last two were great, and I know that next week will be equally as phenomenal. I'm so glad that each of you got the opportunity this morning to hear from two really phenomenal multi-hyphenated women from Memphis who are doing really impactful work. Tonya Dyson, who led us in song, is not only a talented vocalist, but is also the executive director of the Memphis Slim House Collaboratory, located here in Memphis, right across from the legendary Stax Museum of American Soul Music. The Collaboratory helps future musicians have a place to gather and rehearse and learn and create music. It's a wonderful space that she has created for her team. Later in the program, you'll hear from Brooke Sarden. Brooke plays a key role with the Center for Transforming Communities here in Memphis. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to the transformation of neighborhoods and communities in and around Memphis, Tennessee. And over the last 7 months or so, we together have been hosting Civic Saturday gatherings across the city of Memphis, on college campuses, in public libraries. And I am just really inspired by what's happened and how those have transpired. As I said earlier, we're able to do this because of really generous grant that we received from the Memphis Library Foundation. So I want to shout them out in their partnership with us in taking Civic Saturday to all 18 locations of the Memphis Public Library System. It's an honor, man. I'm just kind of floored for words. It's an honor to be with you all today. And I hope that you're doing well in the midst of this global pandemic in which we find ourselves in. There are a number of emotions that you might be feeling right now, from hope to anger and everything in between. And all of those are valid. I'm extremely grateful and thankful to Janae for taking some time before we got started to just kind of center us, right? And give us a moment to acknowledge the various emotions that we have. It's very important in these times to practice and to develop and practice, a habit of self-care. Take care of yourselves, my friends, during these really rough times. This virus is no respecter of political ideology or educational attainment or geographic boundary. Deaths in the US now sit at around 50,000. And I believe it's important for us to sit with that number. We cannot afford as a society to throw that number around lightly. There's some people who consider that a small amount of deaths, consider it some sort of trivial thing. But in the words of Desmond Tutu, every human being is precious. Every human life is of worth and value. And so I'd like to take a moment, just a brief moment, a moment of silence for those who have lost their lives as a result of this pandemic. In addition to death, this toll has taken on our mental, physical, financial, emotional, and spiritual well-being is severe, and it will have lasting impacts on all of us. A recent report by the Kaiser Family Foundation showed that nearly half of the adults in the United States reported that their mental health has been negatively impacted because of the coronavirus outbreak. 4 in 10 people said they have lost income or had their hours reduced or lost their job completely. More than 20 million Americans have filed for unemployment benefits. Across the country, large shares of people report being unable to get medical care unrelated to the coronavirus. These are our friends. These are our family. These are our coworkers. These are our neighbors. And this is us. And my plea to each of us is that we would not let those people go through this alone. That these are the times that require a spirit of mutuality and solidarity among citizens. And I've been extremely encouraged by what I've seen. We are not without hope. From elected officials who are creating task force on a local level to deal with the host of issues, to everyday citizens stepping up to meet the needs of their neighbors and communities and community members. There's a sense that, and I've heard many people say this, that we are all in this together. And I've been kind of pondering on that phrase. What does it mean to use those words, that phrase, we're all in it together? And if we are to use those words, then what does it require of us individually? I believe that it requires at least 3 things. The first thing I think is that it means that we must seek to meet the immediate needs of those who are around us, either through our own or through collective efforts. And in doing that, friends, we must understand that we might be engaged in these efforts for a sustained period of time. We're all looking for a light at the end of the tunnel, but the reality is that we might not see that light for quite some time. And so instead of looking for that light, we must now become that light to offer comfort, aid, and a helping hand to our friends, our family, our neighbors, and yes, even strangers. And the manifestation of that help can play out in multiple ways, from frontline and essential workers doing their best to serve us and meet our needs, to the rest of us observing physical distancing, making unnecessary trips to the grocery store, and staying in place if all possible. One of the civic scriptures that we read this morning came from the book by Rebecca Solnit, The Paradise Built in Hell. And in that, we see that in the wake of earthquakes and bombings and storms, that people become very altruistic. They urgently find ways to engage in caring for themselves and the people that are around them. And I'm really grateful that Eric has taken moments throughout the last couple of sermons to highlight some of those individuals. And I want to take some time to do the same. I'm currently going through a mastermind cohort with the Bridge Alliance, where I'm partnered with 11 incredible individuals who are working on initiatives such as Tea with the People, where you are encouraged to grab a cup of tea, get your device of choice, and join an intimate hour of thoughtful online conversation on race and democracy. One of their first conversations was, what's in a name? The Asian community impacted by the coronavirus language. Another project is the hashtag Give Together Now project, which is a rapid response effort to get cash assistance into the hands of the people who need it the most. Here in Memphis, I'm floored in the library system. Even though we're currently closed, many of my fellow colleagues have taken time to volunteer at organizations such as Meal on Wheels and the Red Cross. These endeavors help us to not only meet the immediate needs, but provide ways for us to weave together as citizens in still a very much divided political climate. The second thing I think this requires of us is to educate ourselves on the various pieces of legislation that are happening on a local, state, and national level, so that we can ensure that people are being helped beyond the way that we're helping. Essentially, what I'm asking, friends, is that in the middle of this pandemic, let's make sure that justice flows. You see, when it comes to solidarity, I've come to understand this, that for some of us, it's very easy to meet an immediate need. to provide for someone who is homeless on the street, to provide for a single parent, to provide for someone who's down on their luck. But it's often much more difficult to go and address the structural issues that have made those things a result. And so what I'm asking you is to be aware of the legislation that's happening in your community. Find organizations who are working to advocating on behalf of those who are on the margins. Here in Memphis, there's a phenomenal organization called MICA, the Memphis Interfaith Coalition for Action and Hope. And on a recent call this week, they outlined a number of issues that they are advocating for and working with local elected officials on. One of them is working against evictions and foreclosures that are happening at the hands of unscrupulous landlords. Another one is supporting access to and the cleanliness of public transit for essential workers who need to get to their jobs each day. Another one is decarceration, particularly for individuals who are in jail simply because they can't post bond. And oftentimes these bonds are less than $500. I would encourage you to do the same thing for your community. Find those organizations who are doing the work. Find those organizations who are speaking for those who don't have a voice. Find the organizations who are amplifying the voices of those who are on the margins. And lastly, I think if we are to use this phrase of being it all in this together, it requires of us to understand that while we are in the same ocean, being ravaged by mighty waves, each of us are in different sized boats. And that means that we're experiencing the effects of those waves much differently, right? Whether that's African-American community that is experiencing disproportionate rates of infections and deaths, or the senior citizen community that's experiencing greater rates of loneliness and social isolation, we must realize that yes, we are in this together, but we're experiencing these things in many different ways. And we should work to provide hope to those who, no matter how they're experiencing it. And then I think lastly, and Eric brought this up, I think maybe in the first conversation, the first Civic Saturday, was this idea of getting back to normal. There are a lot of people saying that phrase and using that phrase, and I get it. I think we all long for some sense of normalcy. But in reality, normal was a disaster for many of our fellow citizens. For some, normal represented nice neighborhoods with great schools and ample green spaces. For some, normal represented great schools that equipped their children with excellent resources and facilities and possibilities. For some, normal represented access to affordable, quality healthcare whenever they needed it. For some, normal represents going back to a well-paying job that affords people the quality of life that they wish. But for many others, my friend, normal represented living in neighborhoods filled with factories that polluted the air and waters, which led to high levels of asthma, cancer, and other diseases. For others, normal represented being in schools that were falling apart, filled with inadequate teaching materials, and students who were doing work from basic phones when their cohorts on the other side of town were doing the same homework from MacBook Pros. For some, normal represented a healthcare system that viewed them as unworthy of receiving the same quality of care. For some, normal represented working longer, harder, for less. So I would say to you that we cannot go back to normal. I would say to you that we must, working together, redefine what normal looks like. Working together, we must work to create a new normal. Well, how do we get there? Researchers have discovered that personal and collective transformations, that something happens as a result of shared experiences from tragic events. The level of camaraderie that we achieve among survivors is almost impossible to replicate under normal circumstances. And so I believe that we can use that transformation that we are all experiencing collectively to work towards something new. We're already seeing in this pandemic that it's creating a sense of collaboration over competition amongst us. And if we can continue to sow these seeds of cooperation and mutual aid and tend to the field in which it's growing, we can ultimately make the necessary move from civic participation to citizen power. Sherry Arnston who wrote a fantastic article in 1969 called The Ladder of Citizen Participation, states that citizen power, and I quote, is the redistribution of power that enables the have-not citizens presently excluded from the political and economic process to be taxed and allocated, no, to be deliberately included in the future. It is the strategy by which the have-nots join in determining how information is shared, goals and policies are set, taxes are allocated, programs are operated, and benefits like contracts and partnerships are parceled out. In short, this means this means that we include the community, we include all of the stakeholders to generate a new future, a new normal that we all can share in. And so I would like to end this talk, and I hope that this has helped you, that this has blessed you in some sort of way, with the same civic scripture that we started with. We stand now where two roads diverge. But unlike the road in Robert's first familiar poem, they're not unequally fair. They're not equally fair. The road we have long been traveling is deceptively easy, a smooth superhighway on which we progress with great speed. But at its end lies disaster. The other fork of the road, the one less traveled by, offers our only chance to reach a destination that assures the preservation of the earth. Friends, thank you so much. It's been great to be with you.
The myth of normalcy. May we never forget the questions raised in the relative quiet. What is essential? What is not? Who is essential and who is not? How dare we ask that question? How dare we ignore that question? Who are we to judge? Who better to judge than us? May our newfound sense of us-we become cellular memory. May the not so peculiar loneliness haunt us, remind us of what's changed or remained woefully, unbearably same since before the incident. Viral outbreak type pandemic. As our gazes search the horizon for relief, remember that we are still in it. This moment now needs our attention. If we rush, there will be leave behinds, and we've been there and done that. This world. I keep wondering if COVID's the only thing we're sick with. On lockdown, my friends and neighbors went straight to swapping homemade pies, like it was something else they were trying to cure. All this distance between us. Flour, butter, sugar, space, and time we've forgotten to share. On lockdown, some of our students went straight to being hungry. And quick came the rules on what we could do about that. And for a while, the rules sounded like no. Civilization can be mean. White coats say that for most of us, the disease, it's asymptomatic. But fever is not the only thing that has us burning. What's the temperature where you are? Is it like this where you are? We talk, quarantine talk, we walk, talk, we sing, pray, our tongues are dripping with aftermath. Lips quiver with effect. I put my ear to the creative underground. Social distancing is social overload, she said. There are 8 people in my house. We're supposed to be safer at home. I have headaches. This is what God wants to do, he says. The one tear in his eye is acceptance. Being an empath is hard right now, she says. People are weird, and I can't help but laugh. He said the extroverts are so sad. She asked how you balance the fear of scarcity with the need for sharing. So many wondering eyes, so many burdens, so many breathtakingly beautiful things we've created to fill these voids. Timelines teeming with visions of handmade loveliness. Too many stories never heard. Tales we think are too small to tell. The still for some of us is chaos for others. Our should-be brothers and should-be sisters are trying to tell us they're not all right, and they are not points on a graph. Our children are showing us how it can be just fine. They are wonderfully loud and play when they are getting on your nerves. They have our laps to sit on for the first time in such a long time. What do you hear when you really listen? Amid the whimpering and wailing, is there good news? Who do you tell? What mind are you making up in preparation for what comes next? The world has gotten small, y'all. If the criteria is common anxiety, I guess I got about 7.8 billion kinfolk. Maybe when this thing is over, y'all can all come to Memphis, plenty of Riverside folding chairs and whatever you like on the grill, we got it. And bring some foil to take home what you want to your people. We are a poor city with plenty of love. The bass bumping from somebody's car will wear away this accumulated confusion, sadness, grief, separation we've been curled up with for all these weeks. If we can just hurry up and get to this thing being over. Is that realistic? I'm scared that over won't mean what we think it means. Will we remember our enlightenment? Will we do enough to take care of those who've been taking care of us and haven't had the time to be traumatized? And those who didn't lose a loved one, but lost 10, 20, 40 of hours, maybe more, and felt helpless, slipped right from the tightest grip of their hands. How will we care for them? How will I know when once again, when the choice is mine, when to move, when to be still? They're saying outright, the world has forever changed. I want us to make sure of that. Let these losses not be in vain. Let us, we proclaim that life before this was not normal. Normal is what you name your cat. Normal is a lie we should never again tell. Take the time to count to 7.8 billion beating hearts. Band together no matter how difficult or how long that takes. Hashtag don't rush and mean it. Every soul is worth lingering on.
Hang on to the world as it spins around. Just don't let the spin get you down. Things are moving fast. Oh, hold on tight and you will last. Give yourself respect. You're very bright. Get yourself in gear. Keep your stride. Never mind your fears. Oh, brighter days will soon be here. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. Yeah. Oh, keep on walking tall. Hold your head up high. Get yourself in gear. Keep your stride. Sing your greatest song. Oh, and you'll keep going, growing on. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. Hey, just wait and see. Someday we'll all be free. Oh, it won't be long. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. Oh, just wait and see. Someday we'll all be free.
Thank you so much, Tonya. Your voice will resonate with us for a good long time. And I want to thank Tonya Dyson for bringing her voice, and before that, Brooke Sarden for bringing her voice and poetry in such a powerful way. And you can find out more about them in the chat. We'll be posting their names. And I already saw in chat, Brooke, that people want to get a copy of that poem. So we'll figure out a way to get that out to folks. But we are just so grateful to all of you for joining us for this Civic Saturday. People from all around the United States. It's been just a joy to see your comments in the chat, a joy to connect with people, new friends and old. And one of the things that we really want to emphasize here is the point that I hadn't seen the text of Shamichael's sermon. The thing that just hit me so hard was the idea that there may not be light at the end of the tunnel anytime soon. And so we have to be that light. And everybody who's participated in the Civic Saturday, whether on camera or off, those of you who've been joining in chat and participating that way, we are that light right now. And we are committed at Citizen University to continue doing these gatherings and to continue doing them in ways that highlight our remarkable civic catalysts from around the country who we've had the chance to train in our civic seminary program. So again, I want to thank Shamichael Hallman from the Memphis Public Library, and just a big citizen of Memphis and the United States.
Thank you, Memphis.
Yes, and thank you, Memphis, for representing in all these ways. And next week, actually at Civic Saturday, we'll be joined by another Civic Saturday fellow, Wendy Willis, a poet and democracy activist from Portland, Oregon. And she'll be bringing musicians from Portland, indeed, I think from her own household. So it's going to be great. And the theme of her sermon is going to be this: the antidote to despair is not hope. The antidote to despair is reckless, burn it all down love. And I think that's what we're all feeling right now.
Really looking forward to that. And right now, I'm just so filled with reality, with hope, but mostly with love. So thanks to all of you for joining together here today. And get ready if you are going to do the civic circles. That'll be happening in a moment. Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.